Ma'am,
Ma'am, yeah. Ma'am, your opening remarks, please.
yeah.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Srinath
Over to
Reddy,
you,
sir.
ma'am.
Dr. Srinath Reddy, welcome, sir.
Ma'am, over to you. Your opening remarks, ma'am.
I didn't hear anything.
Oh,
I can't hear you at all even now.
Is it okay? Ma'am?
are we audible now, ma'am? Hello, are we audible now, ma'am? Yes.
Now I can hear.
Sorry, ma'am, you've been invited to deliver the welcome address already.
Thank you, Dr. Sabha Arora. I don't know for how long you have been waiting.
That's okay, ma'am. Please,
Yeah.
Just a couple of minutes, that's it, yeah.
A very warm greetings and welcome to the launch of the first webinar on the Let's Fix Up Food e-dialogue series on restricting advertising and marketing of unhealthy foods and beverages. Most appropriate to have this meeting on World Obesity Day. A total of 5 e-dialogues are planned in collaboration with a consortium of partners, the details of whom you'll be hearing more from Dr. Sabha Arora, who is going to present after mine. I'm pleased to welcome all the participants, Dr. Zoya Rizvi, Dr. Srinath Reddy Garu, Dr. Bhaskar, Mr. Prasad, Chaitanya Prasad, and UNICEF participants, Youth Network participants, Adolescent Network participants, PHFI, Globe, then Institute of Economic Growth partners, and all the esteemed partners and members. Thank you all for being with us for this important webinar. Now, to tell just a few words about N9, we at N9 formulate nutrient requirements, RDA, develop dietary guidelines for Indians, apart from conducting surveys to assess nutrient consumption patterns and trends in nutrition status. So our studies, right from basic exploratory to clinical and public health research, feeds into policy. India is passing through the phase of nutrition transition. All of us know very well about this. While undernutrition continues to be a public health concern here in India, overnutrition is emerging as a significant problem both in the urban and rural areas, both in the rich, among the rich and among the poor. An analysis by us on all accessible data from India and modeling them for best fits showed a prevalence of 11.5% overweight among 2 to 4-year-old children in 2017. And this prevalence was positively correlated with the socio-demographic index of the state. It was positively correlated, but annualized percentage increase was similar in the 3 SDI groups, meaning the rate of increase is similar in the poorer states as well as in the rich states. So it's not sparing even the poor population. And the projected child overweight was found to be 17.5% by 2030. No state would meet the target of less than 3% by 2030 at this rate, which is the SDG. And child overweight is increasing in a subset of children at the rate of 5% in India. Even among adolescent, overweight is increasing, not just among the higher socioeconomic groups, but also in the low-income groups, where underweight still remains a major concern. So there has been no clear secular trend placing emphasis on how important it is, again, to partner with the youth and adolescent networks. Also, it's not just a size, especially in India, which is a very unique problem to India, but abnormal levels of biomarkers, which are found in over half of the undernourished and normal weight children among normal weight children and adolescents. This is again a worrisome trend, which is which in all probability will lead to non-communicable diseases. As per the most recent NNMS survey from ICMR Institute, one of the ICMR institutes, more than a third of the population in urban and a quarter of people in rural areas have hypertension. And diabetes also is quite high among adult population in India. So 34% to be more precise, and 25% in rural have hypertension in India currently. That is in 2021 report. The same survey reported CHD among 3.5% of adult population, and there was no difference again between urban and rural adults. So keeping in view the relatively higher body fat percent, which is again very unique to Indian population, higher body fat and lower physical activity level of Indians, and considering the low basal metabolic rate due to low muscle mass, we revised the energy requirements for Indians in 2020. However, the major portion of energy in India comes from cereals in both urban and rural regions. We recently reported on this in What India Eats, which is available on our website. Regular consumption of unhealthy foods, which are high in fat, sugar, salt, and all, are known to raise metabolic markers, but cereal-based monotonous diets that are poor in micronutrients and low in fruits and vegetables are also contributing to the metabolic disruption that is increasingly becoming common among adults and children in India, and for which we need to have a multi-pronged approach to halt the rise of obesity. So a shift in the cropping patterns towards coarse cereals, millets and legumes, vegetables, and with nutrition as central to the agriculture, not just the GDP, but nutrition as central to the agriculture is the need of the hour. And accessibility and affordability of nutrient-rich foods must be there. It has to go hand in hand alongside or precede behavior change communication. Then nutrition labeling has been shown to encourage more healthy diets among population. Many studies have shown, but nutrition labeling is again at a very nascent stage in India. We are still figuring out on designs and models. Then food taxes on unhealthy foods and subsidies on healthy food packages will also, to some extent, encourage industry to come up with healthier alternatives. Then as for marketing of unhealthy foods to children, quite a few studies have shown the screen advertising of unhealthy food is extensive around the world, and it is more directed at children. And strong relationships have been shown that exposure to unhealthy food advertisement and childhood obesity. And the evidence base is much stronger for children from socioeconomically deprived group. And limiting food and beverage advertisement on television may be one of the most cost-effective public health approach to reduce the prevalence of childhood obesity. However, all of us know very well, apart from televisions, children consume media from other sources as well, like online and on-demand services also. So also regulation of unhealthy food advertisement must be implemented alongside population-based interventions that address systemic causes of poor diets, such as cereal-based diets with a little or no dietary diversity and sedentary behaviors in India. So with these words, I once again welcome all the participants and wish the webinar an impactful outcome and policy recommendation. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your remarks and for your insightful points which you have shared. Now I would request Dr. Sabha Arora, who is working as a scientist F at the Nutrition, Information Communication and Health Education Division, ICMR National Institute of Nutrition, to provide background and overview of Let's Fix Our Food e-dialogue series. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Tina. And I really thank Director Dr. Himlata for setting the tone for today's very important launch of this e-dialogue series. And we are hoping and we are sure that we will have at the end of these 5 or 6 dialogue series, along with the other partners, we'll have some policy recommendations to make and follow them up with this. And then we're very happy that NIN is leading this particular initiative. I would just like to share a few slides, 3 or 4 of them, not more, to just give you an overview of what this consortium is all about, what Let's Fix Our Food initiative is all about. I'll share my screen. I hope you're able to see the slides. Yeah, just for the background, we all know, and our directors also put it, how the annual rate of increase in obesity, both in rural, urban, and economically well-off and not so well-off, and not so well-to-do sections is taking. And this is in association. I mean, this is along with the existing problems of underweight and also undernutrition and micronutrient malnutrition. In this context, one of the aspects that needs immediate attention and looming is that of overweight and obesity and associated non-communicable diseases, even among adolescents and youngsters, because these are going to be our future citizens. And in that scenario, there were a lot of initiatives, and in June 2021, there was a meeting convened, a high-level dialogue was convened by Niti Aayog, and then it looked at many aspects related to maternal, adolescent, and childhood. As in relation to adolescent and childhood obesity, 5 different points were identified: double duty actions and taxation of HFSS foods, how it is to be done, whether it will be successful or not, and if so, how one needs to go about it, and the front of pack nutrition labeling and its importance, and nutrition literacy approach, that too with the participation from the adolescents. Gone are the days when we see adolescents and beneficiaries as, adolescents as beneficiaries and who need to be told what they need to do, but it is time that we engage them, we engage with them, we also get them into the ambit, and they become our leaders of communication, and then regulating private and public media advertising initiatives of the work. So in this context, as I said, who's missing all the while? There are policy bodies, there are regulators, there are academics, there are NGOs, there is everyone. But the people for whom this entire initiative is started themselves are missing. So they need to be engaged. Young people need to be partners in this. They need to have a space to mobilize, learn, influence, and lead the action from the front. And there is, for this, along with successful policies, meaningful youth engagement is necessary. And for young people to lead decision making, they need to be equipped, they need to be given that kind of an environment. And this is the reason why, it's not just the policy actions. This initiative also looks at adolescent engagement and also capacity building. So in this, with this total background, the entire ecosystem is being worked on. The enabling partners being the UN agencies and international agencies, and the knowledge partners being Beacon and GAI, WOF, and we as Public Health Foundation of India is already into it, and we're very happy that ICMR has joined the consortium now with these e-dialogues, and then we'll also be part of the reviewing and understanding the policy recommendations, and then suggesting them along with the Institute of Economic Growth. And finally, the endeavor is to get the adolescents on board as partners, leaders, and not just as beneficiaries. And these are all the consortium partners, and it has who's working in this area, and all the agencies, including UNICEF, World Food Program, WHO India Office, UR, Deakin University's initiative on global obesity, and PHFI, and the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which is very important ministry for today's topic, and also Niti Aayog at the core of it. And we have the social opinion leaders also as part of it, and we are expecting many more to join this consortium, so that we all work in tandem, not in bits and pieces, and everything is everything falls in place together. So with that initiative, NIN has jumped into this particular consortium with the idea of running these 6 to 7 engaging e-dialogues with multiple stakeholders. As a director has already said, these would range from today's topic of restricting advertising and marketing of unhealthy foods to children, to taxing sugary foods and HFSS foods and how it has worked elsewhere, and what are the possibilities and prospects in India, and then removing unhealthy foods and beverages from the food environments of the children, making food environments more healthy, and then also communication campaigns and what needs to be done to advance these particular policies. So these are going to be some of the e-dialogue topics tentatively as of now. Perhaps we may add 1 or 2 more as we go along. And I once again thank everyone for participating in this program, and I thank our director for giving us this opportunity, and Dr. Srinath Reddy and others for being here. And to set the tone for today's first e-dialogue on advertising and marketing for children, of unhealthy foods for children. You see, the child's food environment has been put rightly by our director, that the child's food environment is at various levels, be it at home, be it at school, in the community, or on the digital space. The child is exposed to a number of unhealthy foods, either by way of marketing or advertising, or by way of peer pressure. and there are several appeals and several techniques are used. This gives an overview of all that. And in that context, today we discuss various topics taking into consideration the perspectives of various stakeholder groups, and the youth-led discussion also will look into the policy and the prospects of this particular topic. And I thank once again for your patient hearing, and then I end here after giving this background for the entire session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rao, for giving those background remarks and giving an overview of Let's Fix Our Food campaign initiative. Taking this forward, now I request Professor Monica Arora, Director, Health Promotion Division, Public Health Foundation of India, to provide an overview on strengthening advertising regulations on unhealthy food to Indian children, their gaps and opportunity. Over to you, Mom.
Thank you so much, Tina. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank Dr. Hemlata as well as Dr. Sabha Arora for an excellent start to today's webinar. So we are already introduced now to the theme for today as well as to the consortium. So my presentation would from PHFI studies, but also I'm presenting on behalf of stakeholder consortium of which PHFI is a part. And briefly, the Health Promotion Division where this partnership is hosted at PHFI, it focuses on non-communicable disease prevention and control as well as adolescent health. So we bring to the table scientific support as well as our adolescent network in this consortium. So I'll briefly talk about burden, though we have some data already shared by Dr. Hemlata. But what I'm highlighting is from NFHS 4 to NFHS 5, we see that there is a clear increase in under 5 overweight obesity. And this is across all states in India. So this rapid increase means that children with obesity will have not only poorer health during childhood, but most of them will continue into adulthood as obese, and thus increasing the risk of non-communicable diseases, indicating huge burden on our health system and thus health expenditure. So understanding that not just talking about personality or the physicality that is related to obesity. It is also the health cost, which is important and why different stakeholders have a role in it. On the right side of this slide, we see figures from the report released today by World Obesity Federation, the World Obesity Atlas, which places India on preparedness to be able to achieve the target of overweight obesity, which has been set by the government. We are placed at a rank of 99 out of 183 countries. And also we see that the projections for 2030 are very, very scary. We see increase in not only adult obesity, but also childhood obesity will increase, and the numbers are shown across the age group. So among 5 to 9 years old, we will have about 11% as obese and about 6% in the age group of 10 to 19. Thus, underscoring the need to start working more aggressively on overweight obesity, while also not ignoring our already established work on undernutrition in our country. So we need to work on both ends of the spectrum, adopting a syndemic approach. And we do know that not just behavior change, communication will bring about a change, though it plays a very important role. We do need to understand what is happening apart from the food environment. So this slide from the CNNS data very clearly highlights the not only the unhealthy dietary patterns, but also physical inactivityness and the new risk factor of sedentariness, which has again grown because of school lockdowns during COVID and many parents complaining of overweight, obesity among children, where they are sitting most of the time on their computers, attending their online classes, but then continuing on to play video games and being online all the while to connect with their peer group. So there is increase in the screen time, there is decrease in outdoor physical activity, and even on the consumption, if we see the graph, it is very clear that foods which need to be avoided consumed among those 19-year-old who are already overweight. It's on there is with the global commitment, we have our targets. The target is halt in the rise of obesity and diabetes prevalence. And there has to be a relative reduction in the prevalence of insufficient. These are targets for adults, and we need for children and adolescents as well. Of it can be implemented, but the framework. When we say halt in the rise, the trends are showing we are nowhere close to. So highlighting that we need to look at issues not only as health, but we need to understand what are the social and commercial determinants which are spearheading this epidemic.
Dr. Monica,
strategies which are
yes, sorry to disturb. Your audio is breaking. If you could just switch off your camera for a while, probably it will help. Not too sure, but you know.
Sure.
Your connection seems to be a bit unstable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's hope it is better now. So various strategies which are adopted for marketing, advertising, and promotion of foods which are high in fat, salt, and sugar are varying right across from internet to social media, television, packaging, educational institutions see advertising in and around the schools. Also, sports sponsorships, event sponsorships, print media, point of sale, most celebrity endorsements, which are very, very essential when we. So, which
I think there is some network issue, Mom.
Dr. Monica, can you hear us?
I think she has just dropped down. Maybe she'll just join back. Maybe if you can just wait for 2 minutes.
Else, can we move on to the next item on agenda and come back?
Meanwhile, I'll just
whenever she's
request
done.
all the participants, please ask your questions, maybe using the Q&A panel. It will be like addressed to the panelists and the speakers, and we'll just try to answer those. And there is one query in the Q&A that the recording will be available for everyone in the public domain. So it will be soon be available. So just meanwhile, Dr. Monica, just try to join in again with us. I think Dr. Monica is just joining in 2 minutes. So we just got the message. If you can just wait. Yeah. Yeah, she has joined. Yes.
Apologies. There is internet issue in the office, I think. Can you hear me fine now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll reshare my screen. Okay, so yeah. So we were talking about the content analysis, which was undertaken of television advertisements, and it was very clear. We observed both the children popular TV channels as well as channels which were popular among youth. And we observed them over the weekend and over weekdays as well. And the findings are very clearly highlighting that during the time that children observe, which is the prime time for children and youth, there is a spike. And this spike that we see is of advertisements of foods which are high in fat, salt, and sugars. And by literature, it has been selected that these time frames are when children are watching the television most. So very clearly that children are being targeted. A higher proportion of these advertisements were seen on children channels as compared to youth channels. So they would like to have the customers recruited early on. And maximum of these advertisements, as I said, are mostly of foods which are high in fat, salt, and sugar. This evidence was presented to various stakeholders back in June 2021 when a meeting was invited of various partners and stakeholders under National Consultation on Prevention of Maternal, Adolescent, and Childhood Obesity. And at that, a consortium was brought together by UNICEF to be able to coordinate mechanisms, harmonize support, and seek advice and direction from partners on how we can move forward. And 5 thematic areas were discussed, which was marketing and advertising of these unhealthy food products, taxation, front of package nutrition labeling, double duty action, and behavior change communication campaigns to be able to ensure that these messages are reaching out to the target audience, and there is behavior change that is happening to be able to correct the food environment and provide a supportive environment for embracing behavior change. Another study undertaken by us was highlighting the role of food environment beyond advertising, and this is access and availability. And under access and availability, we have to understand that the foods, when they were studied in school settings, we observed schools in Delhi, 9 schools, which included private and government schools as well as colleges. And it was found that not only there was availability of food items which are either high in fat, salt, or sugar, but also the options which are of healthy food products are expensive. Vendors were seen outside schools at time of dispersal and lunchtime, but in colleges they were seen to be there throughout the day. And also on advertising, it was found that there is high advertising around schools, more so in around private schools, but we did not find advertisements around government schools. So some evidence we need to further explore as to why that was happening. So how we can look at various legislation and regulations. So we know there are mandatory guidelines and there are voluntary guidelines, and evidence is very clear that mandatory provisions work only to be able to effectively curb the exposure. And voluntary measures have not been found to be very effective. Under mandatory guidelines, we have various rules and acts that are available with Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Ministry of Communication, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Consumer Affairs, Health and Family Welfare, and FSSAI definitely is playing a lead role in that direction. So what needs to be done? There is already a regulation by FSSAI that restricts sale and advertisement of these food products in school canteens and within 50 meters. How this can be effectively enforced is to be seen as schools are about to open in the new academic year. What constitutes a violation will have to be defined, and we'll have to see there are acts like around Infant Milk Substitute Act, which is very strong, but it is only around products related to infants. Can we have similar provisions for children and adolescents that can be introduced to protect them from misleading advertisements? Similarly, INB has a particular provision which does not permit advertisement of tobacco, alcohol, cigarettes. Can something similar be drawn for HFSS foods and sugar-sweetened beverages? Self-regulatory body, the ASCI, is existing, but there are no legal provisions to penalize for violations. And the Line Ministry around Consumer Protection Act does provide provisions to be able to bring to their notice of misleading advertisements, but we need stronger measures to address endorsements of these products by celebrities or others who are influencers for children. Eat Right movement is a very popular behavior change communication intervention being led by FSSAI. Many schools and campuses around the country are part of it. And there are also policy provisions under the program, which is Make India Trans Fat Free by 2022 and reduce India's salt consumption. So we need a combination of policy intervention as well as interventions in the school, family, and the community setting. Coming to what is the landscape of marketing, WHO India has conducted this study, which shows that the marketing expenditures are huge. Media planning and marketing strategies notably include use of children, cartoon characters, celebrities for promotion and inclusion of toys. So we need to address some of these issues when we are looking at protecting children and adolescents. And since obesity requires a systems-based thinking and comprehensive policy covering prevention, health system response, to manage it across the life course in different settings, it is crucial we bring all the actors together. And we see that many ministries have a role in it. Many food and safety nets can be built across WCD, civil supplies, education. Coordination mechanisms are needed. We can tie up with interested agencies nationally, internationally. But when we come to multi-stakeholder platforms, we see all the players around this, but the voice which is missing is of adolescents. We need to bring in adolescent voices into these alliances and listen to them to be able to intervene and draft programs which are demand-driven by the beneficiaries. This was also underscored by the Lancet Adolescent Nutrition Series, which clearly highlighted the need to meaningfully engage adolescents and youth for effective programming and policy interventions. So I would now like to quickly emphasize on what are the recommendations which come out from this policy analysis. We can modify existing rules and regulations of FSSAI and Ministry of Information and Broadcasting related to advertisements and claims to restrict marketing of HFSS foods and sugar-sweetened beverages. We need to discourage promotion by children, celebrities, endorsements. We need to develop comprehensive regulatory policies around addressing marketing, point of sale promotion, toys, gifts, digital and traditional media. Restrict timings and volume of these advertisements, effectively enforcing regulations on front of pack labeling and educating consumers to use this information. and impose higher taxes on HFSS foods and SSB, though we need to understand the Indian context of how this can be addressed more meaningfully for adolescents, children, and for adults as well. So in my concluding slide, I would like to quickly highlight that various stakeholders have a role, but to begin with, we have a role by Ministry of INB. We have Ministry of Education that can disallow promotional events in school settings. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare can design BCC messages and give it to INB, which can be then broadcasted through their mechanisms. We can strengthen implementation of FSSAI regulation by prohibiting marketing in and around school and better enforce it, but also look at the new channels which are coming up, social media, and how Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology can ensure that children are protected. So as we move together, I would like to say the youth-led campaign, Let's Fix Our Food, is definitely one voice we need to bring to these alliances as we deliberate today on who are the important stakeholders. Let's include youth voices to advance India's young people's right to healthy food and healthy food environments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing those evidences of high exposure of HFSS food through various means and recommendations to protect our current and future generation. Taking this forward, now may I request Dr. Martino to share global experience on what works. Over to you, Dr. Martino.
Can I please, share my screen? Go. I'd like to thank the previous speakers and the Let's Fix My Food initiative for putting on this important e-dialogue. I really enjoyed your presentation before, Dr. Monica, that set the landscape, the regulatory landscape in India. It's a real pleasure presenting to you today, and I will be presenting on the global evidence of what works in restricting unhealthy food marketing. As many of you know, overweight is complex with many causes and consequences. We know that no single action will be sufficient on its own to solve the problem of overweight. And we know that a whole systems approach is required and that restricting unhealthy food marketing is an important component of what needs to be done. India has made various global commitments to protect children from the harmful impacts of unhealthy food and beverage marketing. India is, for example, a signatory of the WHO set of recommendations on the marketing of food and beverages to children that recommends governments to take legislative action to ban unhealthy food marketing. And India has ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1992, which states that parties should act appropriately to combat disease and malnutrition and protect children from economic exploitation. So why should we regulate food marketing to children? We've heard a bit from Monica before. I'd like to draw your attention to this report here, which was released just last month and which drew together 179 studies from high, low, and middle income countries. This report concluded that food marketing continues to be prevalent everywhere and predominantly promotes foods that contribute to unhealthy diets. Now, in the last decades, the authors found a major increase in food marketing via digital and social media to children, of course, reflecting the growth in internet use. The problem here is that digital technology has shown to facilitate greater engagement of children and young people with food marketing, for example, through influencers. Now, how does marketing work? In this diagram, the blue boxes represent areas where we now have very strong evidence, as represented in the WHO report. The green boxes is where the evidence is less strong. So we see here that exposure and power of unhealthy food marketing across a wide range of settings and media increases product and brand awareness, preferences and loyalties. It increases purchase of unhealthy food among older children who have their own purchasing power. It also increases requests of unhealthy foods by younger children to caregivers, undermining intentions and desires to provide their children healthy, nutritious food. Third, it increases the normalization of marketed foods across societies and across the life course. All of this drives consumption of unhealthy foods, increased energy intake, leading to weight gain and overweight in the long term. Hence, marketing of unhealthy foods undermine the government's commitment to uphold the UN Conventions on the Rights of the Child and the child's right to highest attainable standard of health. From an industry point of view, food marketing is highly influential. That is the reason why billions of dollars are spent on it across the globe and in India every year. It is also why countries are starting to take government-led mandatory action. This is important because global evidence shows very clearly that industry-led codes simply do not adequately protect children from this marketing. In Chile, in 2016, the food labeling and advertising law was implemented. And this prohibits marketing of unhealthy foods and beverages that are directed to children under 14 years in any medium. So in programs and websites, children's events. It also bans marketing on the packaging of unhealthy foods if the marketing includes child-directed techniques and incentives such as cartoons, animations and toys, and any other techniques or content that could attract the attention of children. Additionally, it requires front of pack warning labels on unhealthy products. And finally, it also banned marketing of all unhealthy food and beverages in cinema and TV between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. Has it worked? Well, here we see the results from a study that looked at the changes in children's exposure to unhealthy food marketing in Chile post-policy implementation. The evidence shows here there was a significant reduction in children's exposure to unhealthy food advertising with child-targeted appeals on television. We see here wave 1, which was pre the policy implementation, and wave 2, see here, was year post the policy implementation. For preschoolers, 1 year post-policy implementation, the mean weekly minutes of unhealthy food marketing exposure decreased by 35%. For adolescents, the reduction was 52%. Whilst this reduction was significant, the law was not found to eliminate unhealthy food advertising overall. Highlighting challenges with the child-directed approach, and indeed, our research interviewing policymakers in Chile have confirmed that this is one of the most challenging aspects of that policy design. What about impact on purchases? Again, the evidence is positive here. This 2020 study showed that 1 year post-policy implementation, there was a 23.7% reduction in purchases of sugar-sweetened beverages compared to what was expected if the policy was not in place. Reductions in the purchase of these beverages was seen across all education groups, with some indication that the reduction was slightly higher for the highest education groups. Further studies report that the policy had relatively high compliance by industry, and there was no impact found on industry labor market outcomes. And norms have shifted such that parents have viewed the law positively and they perceived their families' eating practices to be healthier. Another global example that has been peer-reviewed is the 2019 Transport for London food advertising policy, which banned unhealthy food advertising across the Transport for London real estate. This included trains, metros, buses, stations, bus shelters, etc. Evidence shows that restrictions of unhealthy food advertising across the transport networks could have a meaningful impact on population health. These graphs show the average weekly household purchase of energy from products high in fat, salt, and sugar, and that they were down by 6.7% or 1,000 kilocalories. The authors observed the largest relative reduction for chocolate and confectionery purchases here, which was 19.4%. Whilst these reductions are positive, the biggest limitation with this London transport policy is that brands and logos can be included in the advertisement if the ad promotes healthy products. This is problematic as brand marketing alone or in combination with healthy products has shown to increase consumption of unhealthy products. And these so-called healthy products also include in this case, ultra-processed foods that can continue to be advertised, such as artificially sweetened drinks. And finally, in the Republic of Korea, the Special Act on the Safety Management of Children's Dietary Lifestyle, which was implemented in 2013, seeks to build safe food environments for children and covers multiple policy aspects, including food marketing. It bans unhealthy food advertising before, during, and after television programs aired between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m., a 2-hour slot, and during other children's programs. The restrictions also apply to some advertising on TV, radio, and the internet when incentives are used to encourage purchases, such as free toys. Now, the studies show that the TV food marketing restrictions led to reformulation of foods and beverages, mainly by lowering free sugar content, which was then replaced with artificial sweeteners. 1 year after policy implementation, there was a reduction in total advertising budget. Limitations with the Korean laws are that the law allows the advertising of brands and logos again. So this means that companies like McDonald's or Coca-Cola can continue to advertise their logos everywhere. This is a limitation across the globe, and no country has addressed this issue yet. Secondly, there was a limited change to companies' reported promotional activities, but the largest change reported was the introduction of online marketing. And the law does not cover any other media, such as internet, public spaces, and transport. I will now briefly describe how we can translate this global evidence to the Indian context with a few examples. Monica has covered this extensively already. Stronger regulation on TV is required to take a watershed approach, like in Chile. So there's no advertising between a certain time frame. Ensure a focus on all advertising that children see, not what is directed to him. Make sure that regulation restricts advertising of brands and logos. Expand the food safety and standards regulations so they kept the food marketing on public transport and in other outdoor places. Mandate guidelines for influencer advertising in digital media and extend them to cover all online food marketing. Make sure that monitoring, enforcement, and accountability mechanisms are written into the legislation. And the legislation in the countries reviewed were based on a few different nutrient profile models, which restrict marketing of many unhealthy products, but allow marketing of certain unhealthy ultra-processed foods, including products with artificial sweeteners. We suggest to use the comprehensive nutrient profile model developed for your region by the WHO Southeast Asia. I'd like to thank you all for listening, and if you'd like to get a bit more information, please contact me here. And I'd like to thank my supervisor at Globe and the Institute for Health Transformation at Deakin University. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martino. That is very, very insightful and sharing your global experiences. That was very, very helpful to understand the global perspective. For the next session, that is on the perspective. And it gives me immense pleasure to invite. Can I just request, Florentine, maybe if you can just, yeah, thank you so much. It gives me an immense pleasure to invite Professor K. Srinath Reddy, President, Public Health Foundation of India, to share his perspective on advertising of unhealthy foods. Over to you, sir.
So can you turn on your mic, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. It's been very illuminating as well as alarming to listen to the rise of childhood obesity globally and in India. Recognizing that even the typical anthropometric markers of obesity do not necessarily reflect the immensity of the metabolic risk, because even when the anthropometry is not suggestive of what might be called obesity, the reduced lean muscle mass and increased body adiposity introduces metabolic changes which are likely to be quite deleterious to vascular health as well as the health of many other parts of the body. And this, the director of NIN has very clearly explained that there is a considerable amount of metabolic risk that is detected by markers rather than by the classical anthropometric indices. In that context, what is happening to our children, both in terms of measured obesity as well as unmeasured metabolic risk, is quite threatening. And we recognize, as has been very well brought out by all the presentations, that advertising is one way in which unhealthy foods and beverages are being aggressively marketed in order to entrap children into addictive behaviors. And that is actually being channeled through multiple media and multiple strategies being employed. We are quite familiar with how broadcast media like TV and radio have been used, but we are also seeing non-broadcast marketing like product packaging, video games, internet, text messages, events being sponsored, celebrities being brought in to endorse the products. All of these are multiple pathways for advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. And that is actually enhancing the consumption of unhealthy food products, which are not only becoming a problem on their own, but because they are also substituting for healthier elements of the diet, especially in poorer families where we find that children are attracted to unhealthy food products, and the families, when they try to satisfy their children's aspirations for those products, are actually spending less on healthier foods. And even in terms of the more affluent families, the very fact that a lot of food that's being consumed is unhealthy is replacing healthy food items, and therefore the substitution effect is also something that we ought to really take into account, and not just the consumption, but even the substitution component. There are, of course, very strong associations between exposure to advertising and consumption of non-nutritious food, as has been very clearly explained in the earlier presentations. Children have a very high recall ability of what has been advertised in the media that they watch. In fact, among very young children, it has been noted they're more likely to recall the food product with greater accuracy than their own surname. We have also recognized through studies and publications of the American Psychology Association that the product preference is strongly conditioned and influences the children's decision, and they're in turn influencing their parents' purchasing preferences in order to satisfy the children's urges. Children under 6 cannot distinguish between programming and advertising. between the editorial content and the entertainment content and the advertising content, and there is a blur. Children under 8 cannot understand the persuasive intent of advertising. They recognize what is advertising, but they do not understand it is essentially being an instrument in which their preferences are being conditioned in order to increase the commercial interests of the people who are actually marketing the product. Therefore, it's not surprising that the American Psychology Association says that advertising directed at young children is exploitative. Indeed, it is exploitative. So we do need a very robust response. And that will come in not only through education, but also through regulation. And regulating against the misuse of the opportunities provided by advertising, promotion, and sponsorship for increasing the sale of unhealthy food products and beverages is an absolutely important element. Whenever we talk of regulation, the food industry strikes back, just as the tobacco industry did, saying that it is a matter of free choice and we should not be a nanny state trying to influence the choices of individual persons or families, and that we have no right to interfere. Maximum we can educate, but we should never legislate. Unfortunately, choice, which is proclaimed by them as being totally autonomous, is not really so, is not so free and independent. Choice is determined. Choice is either conscious, conditioned, or constrained. It is conscious based on the right or the wrong information. In this case, advertising provides the wrong information, very misleading information, apart from creating very alluring images under very congenial conditions of what pleasure and even sometimes a wrong promise of good health from the products that are being consumed. At the same time, it can be conditioned by very aggressive marketing and peer pressure, both of which are essentially instruments and consequences of advertising. It can also be constrained by the financial status. You may have a better awareness of the nutritional qualities of food products, but if there are economic constraints by the healthier products being the costlier products and the unhealthy products being more purchasable, then it becomes an important element of the ultimate consumption pattern. And we recognize from multiple studies that have been conducted that even the supermarkets offer much more concessional rate sales on unhealthy food products than on healthier food products. So we see even in that marketing strategy that is actually driven by the industry, that there is a constant push to promote by all means possible the sale of unhealthy food products and beverages. And of course, with social media coming in, regulation also has become a major challenge, as has already been pointed out, and very few countries have really taken up a stance against that. In terms of broadcast media, some countries, for example, in the UK, have actually taken the position that advertising of unhealthy food products and beverages directed at children should not be permitted before 9 p.m. But the question about social media is becoming a big challenge. Ireland in 2018 introduced what is called a voluntary guideline in the legislation, saying that the social media content under 15 years of age should not promote any advertising of food products. Now, that is only a voluntary measure, but nevertheless, those are the kind of measures that we really need to look at, how best we can also bring social media under better control in terms of their being much more responsible in their public health behavior. So we also need to ensure that young people are certainly engaged because this concerns them. We have seen that in case of tobacco, where the leadership of young people who are outraged by the way in which the tobacco industry tried to manipulate them into getting into tobacco addictive behaviors, that caused a tremendous amount of resistance to the tobacco industry, tremendous amount of pushback there. And we have seen even in our own experience with the schools in Delhi as well as elsewhere in India, and even in some of the global youth meets that we have organized, that getting youth leaders to become advocates is very impactful indeed. And getting peer-to-peer education on what even the consequences of harmful advertising are is going to be very important. And therefore, I'm very happy that this particular event is actually reflecting a number of youth voices, and I'm eager to listen to that component as well. But advocacy must be directed both by adults and by young youth advocates against multiple potential change makers. That is, to the government most certainly, to the media, because the media also has to be responsible in the nature of advertising that they do, and to other industries as well. Like we know, for example, the toy makers frequently tie up with the food industries by putting toys, permitting the supply placement of toys in cereal packages and so on, which have high sugar content, or there are often partnerships between these because both are aiming at a younger child audience. So these are some of the things that we must look at. Similarly, cinema, animation pictures, which are actually looking at, we know that Disney had collaborated for a long time with some of the fast food and beverage industry. So these are the kind of things that appear to be commercially convenient for different industries who are targeting the younger age group market. But we must advocate with each of them and ensure that we apply enough social pressure that they do not collaborate and they do not actually become agents of collusion in enticing children and entrapping them into addictive food and beverage consumption patterns. And in this, we must also appeal to celebrities that they should not actually become important agents of marketing these agents by promoting them, endorsing them. And we have had excellent role models, like, for example, Pullela Gopichand, the famous badminton player who won the All England championship in badminton and has been a coach to our superstars, both to Saina Nehwal as well as to Sindhu. And therefore, when Gopichand was invited by us to a global youth meet several years ago, he very clearly said that the reason he had refused any kind of offers from any soft drink firm, whether it was Coca-Cola or Pepsi, was because he firmly believed that they were not good for the children's health, and he refused to become a brand ambassador for those. He lost out a lot of endorsement money, but that was his holding up his principle high. And recently we saw also in the Euro, in the football championships, Cristiano Ronaldo pushing aside Coca-Cola from the press conference table and taking a stand that he would rather drink water than Coca-Cola. That was a very firm stand. Interestingly, when young Cristiano Ronaldo was actually playing for Manchester United, he was noted to be carrying around a Coca-Cola bottle, and Ryan Giggs, the senior player in the team, got so upset that he pushed Cristiano Ronaldo against the wall and said, "Never do it again. I don't want to see you with a Coke bottle again." So we do need to appeal to sports people, the older people who are going to be role models to younger people. But everybody has to really keep away from advertising these harmful products, whether it is Pullela Gopichand or Rahul Dravid. They are the kind of role models that the celebrities should actually adopt by spurning attractive commercial offers to become agents for these unhealthy food products. So the kind of pressure can come in from different sections of society, but when young people themselves speak up and tell some of these celebrities and sports stars that please do not play around with our lives by sponsoring unhealthy products, then they're more likely to listen. So I believe we need to pursue several strategies, including counter-advertising. Counter-advertising is also going to be important. Promotion of healthy foods is also going to be absolutely important, and giving much greater health literacy is going to be important. because if people have to make conscious choice, we have to promote good health literacy and nutritional literacy. We have to ensure that we counter harmful peer pressure by peer group influences themselves. And we certainly need to counter harmful advertising pressure, which conditions the young minds by ensuring the right kind of regulatory measures as well as suitable counter advertising. I believe this is a very important element. Of course, the strategies will have to be conditioned to the national context, to our own cultural patterns, our own methods of disseminating information as appropriate to our social realities. But nevertheless, this is a very important element that must be addressed with a great deal of speed, and it cannot be really put off, because the epidemic of obesity is being really propelled by commercial determinants. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think very, very importantly, and you rightly just mentioned and highlighted the importance of involving all the stakeholders for creating and fostering this healthy food environment. Thank you so much for your, sir, pointers and perspective. Taking this forward, now I just request Dr. N. Bhaskar, who is an advisor at FSSAI, to share 360-degree perspective on promoting healthy food consumption through regulation of marketing and advertising. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I hope I'll be able to share my screen. Yeah,
Yes.
I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. Okay. Before I make my speech or present whatever I had to present, I just would like to state one thing. I mean, this is reality. I mean, I'm not speaking off hat. It is the data. It's a 2021 data based on the prevalence of obesity in the world, the global scenario, ranking 200 different countries for obesity. I thought it's apt, because this being World Obesity Day, it's apt to present this. If you really look at where we stand as a country across the globe, it's not, I think at least the positive is that we are not in the top half, we are in the bottom half. We are closer towards the least obese countries. Obviously so, because the kind of economy we are in and the kind of populations we have and the kind of spread we have, it's likely that we will be in the bottom half. That means we are least obese, but it does not mean that we need to be lax. So that's what I wanted to say before I present what I wanted to present from the point of view of 360-degree perspective of the entire policy. So I mean, it's not all that bad, but it doesn't mean that we need to be lax as well. So that's I wanted to say. And when I said, when Dr. Rao asked me to make a speech on this, and I thought, it's better to give a 360-degree perspective how we are working on these. But then Dr. Monica, when in her opening remarks, she made my life a bit easy, because she already covered a few of the initiatives that FSSA is doing per se. So that's something I should thank her for. I just want to highlight a few things. When you look at the entire regulatory framework, it is not a standalone by itself, nor something that is self-contained in itself. It requires the tacit and the full support of all other stakeholders as well. So when I say stakeholders, it also means the consumers, the industry, because there is a supply side, there is a demand side, and there is somebody who's going to regulate these two people. The only issue is I won't be able to regulate the consumer. The only thing we can make is to make sure that the consumer are aware and have good enough information to look at things that they need to look at. And in so far as industry is concerned, we make sure that they implement wherever it is required. They need to improve, and they also need to innovate wherever there are regulatory framework changes that happen. So what we do as regulator is, being reliable and responsive, and a responsible entity which actually supports and monitors both the sides of the coin, both the industry as well as the demand side. So it's ultimately, if you really look at the triangle, it's like you need to connect and communicate. You also need to be responsible and make the other side aware as to what they need to look at, and then only the policy can be considered as a success, or a regulation or a regulatory framework is considered to be a successful thing. So in that aspect, let me just brief you what as regulators we have done so far, insofar as I would just restrict myself to what we're discussing today about the children of this country, or the youth of this country. So through one of the regulations, this is not being able to be enforced for two reasons. One, because so far we have not been able to define the high fat, salt, sugar diet. However, the regulation is in place. Actually, it prohibits sale of all these HFSS foods to school children, not only in the premises or in the hostel kitchens or in the school canteens, but also anywhere 50 meters on all the sites of the school. So this is already in place. However, it is not being enforced only for the reason that we have not so far been able to define high fat, salt and sugar, because it needs a data that actually looks at different things. Here I would like to highlight one more thing. When we tell that we are regulating the food or food products, it also means that we are only trying to regulate only the processed and packaged foods. We are not really regulating something that is actually prepared then and there and then sold to the customers or the consumers. So that is also another difficult thing. For instance, we as regulators, is difficult to regulate something like a street food vending. But when I come to the next part, what we are doing for the consumers, I would tell you how we are trying to even address those kind of small issues, but which have larger impact. The second one is actually on the labeling and display regulations. In these regulations, there is a specific distinction made between foods that are meant for different age groups, which also covers the children. And then there is menu labeling that has already been made mandatory, and which is going to kick in from 1st April 2022, which actually enables the consumers to make informed choice when they're dining out themselves or with the children. So they know what to choose for their children or even for themselves as well. So this clearly gives actually what they can eat, which is quite healthy, or what they can avoid, which is not healthy. So that is another thing that the labeling and display regulations have built in, which are mandatory. And in case of the food product standards of food additives regulation, there are mandatory statements that are to be put onto the processed or packaged foods, especially for those foods which are meant only for children, where warning statements or even alerting statements are put on the processed or packaged foods, which clearly indicates to the consumer as to whether that can be consumed by children or not. For instance, if something contains caffeine, already it is mentioned that it contains caffeine. If it is high in caffeine, it will be mentioned it is high in caffeine, and then there will be a warning statement which says that it is not meant for consumption by pregnant women or children. So this is very clearly laid out in the regulation. Insofar as claims are concerned, actually there are general principles laid out in the claims regulation, even for advertisements. And then if there is something that is specifically meant for a particular target groups, they need approval, and then procedure for approval of such claims is also laid out in these regulations. In addition to all this, at different places, all the other regulations, extant regulations that are available and brought out by FSSA, which are mandatory, they do contain a lot of mandatory warning statements, especially for those products which are intended for children or infants. So, for instance, it can be foods for infant nutrition, or it can be food for special medical purposes. Especially if it is meant for children, then they have to declare that it is meant for children, not below the age of this, or not for people above, not for children with these conditions. All those things actually are provided for in the regulation. So now, what is the way forward that what we are thinking in terms of what FSSA would like to look at? One is that we are trying to finalize, although I mean the consensus is being worked out so far, on to create a front of the pack labeling, so that the consumers know what exactly their products contain, and then they can make an informed choice, not only for themselves but also for their children, for especially the younger population. And even the younger population who are educated, or who are nutrition literacy or tech savvy, they should be able to find out what exactly, even with one glass, what exactly they're trying to consume, or whether they should avoid it or they should consume it. And there is also a restriction on advertisement of HFSS foods to children. However, like I said in the beginning, the very fact that we have not so far defined the high fat, salt, sugar diets, actually he is playing on imposing this restriction. And soon we are expecting that once our scientific panel makes a recommendation, we would be able to even define the HFSS foods, and then all the other including the school children regulation as well as the restrictions will start kicking in, especially in terms of HFSS foods to children. Now, this, having said this, as regulator, what are we trying to do in terms of creating awareness amongst the masses, especially the consumers of this country? So what we have done is, actually we have made a movement called as Eat Right India movement. And I always keep saying that when you talk about food safety, or eating healthy or eating nutritious, it always means it's a shared responsibility. It just does not stop only with the regulator, nor it just stops with the industry, nor it just only is against the consumer. No, everybody has to share. The consumers actually have to know what they're getting into, so that, and the regulator need to know what the industry is providing to the consumer, whether it is good or bad, how it can be better regulated, how it can be controlled, especially in terms of providing a safer, a healthier food to the consumers. And certainly children are a bigger mass, or a bigger segment in that thought process. So what we as regulators have also done, going beyond our mandates, we are trying to promote eating right, eating safe, and then eating sustainably as well. And then we have consumer connects, where people can actually lodge their concerns or complaints about a particular product or a packaged food, especially if it is being marketed willingly to the target groups. So they can be they can be raising a complaint with using our consumer connect numbers, on which is available on our website. Even on our social media handles they can do that, and even on the helpline they can do it. In addition to this, we also have brought a lot of guidance notes, which promote or which indicate about what is a nutritious thing that they can do. Like, if you can see on the right side of the screen, you will see we have publications like Eat Right India Handbook, or Are You Eating Right? And the pink book is especially for the housewives, where actually certain safer and healthier practices are given to make sure that the children or the family gets a healthier food. And even the orange book is especially for children only, especially for the school canteens, as well as even canteens available in workplaces. And in addition to all that, there is also a guidance note about menu labeling, which is also meant for different stakeholders, including consumers. So where it also actually speaks of importance of menu labeling. Besides all this, as a global signatory to making India trans fat free, we have also already brought in regulations, and we are almost on the verge of becoming trans fat free by January 2023, where industry has been a signatory. Consumers are made aware about trans fat, the negative effects of trans fats, both to the family as well as to the children. And then this has already kicked in, and probably when we do the next survey on trans fat, we really would be able to provide the solid data as to how the trans fats have been eliminated, especially in the processed or packaged foods. In addition to all this, there are a lot of awareness materials. And then one important thing is, next time when you walk into some of the sweet shops or some of the restaurants, you can also look for hygiene rating, where the facility or the premise would have been evaluated by a third party to make sure that the hygiene or the safety standards in that premise are at par, which will take care of your health and certainly about your nutrition as well. So which means that you can safely take you or your children to those facilities and make sure that you get a nice nutritious serving. Having said all this, there is something that is very important, and which needs involvement of all the stakeholders, including the reputed institutions like National Institute of Nutrition, all the non-governmental organizations, and even the foundations, which need to work on providing nutritional literacy to the masses. Which means unless we try to make sure that they are nutritionally literate, it is not going to serve even if we make hundreds of regulations or hundreds of awareness materials or hundreds of guidance. So how to read the label or how to understand what is important to your health, especially in terms of dietary inputs, is so important. And hence this is something where I would suggest, and I also request all the people on board, especially who are here, including the youngsters, to be able to contribute to this cause of creating the nutritional literacy amongst the masses. So in all, I can say we are also trying to create a behavioral change on the demand side, which is the consumer, and we also expect all the like-minded organizations and the institutions to join hands with us, and we don't mind joining hands with such institutions or such organizations to create any behavioral change on the demand side. Now, what are we trying to do in terms of industry? The moment we say, we are amending a regulation or we're bringing out a regulation, the industry has to comply to those. So what industry has to do in those cases is actually, it has to go for, implementing it, which means they have to innovate to formulate their products so that all these negative nutrients like, salt, sugar, or saturated fats are reduced in their products. So which means if they start doing this kind of innovation to reformulate their products, it especially addresses the attraction of the younger masses or the children to these products, but with a healthier touch to that. And then they're also, because of all these changes in the regulations, they also make public pledges, and they actually are, as a responsible corporate entity, they always stand by it, and we make sure that we monitor whether they are trying to do what they committed in the pledges. And in addition to all this, we also are actually making sure that through our front of the pack labeling, when it kicks in, there will be a portion control, especially the serve size or even the serve quantity of these negative nutrient-rich foods to younger masses. And especially, like I said, once we define the HFSs, all this will actually follow suit, and then it would be a reality. And then I can really stand by the sentiments expressed by my previous speakers who said, this is very important and this needs to be done. Certainly, we are always trying our best to do this, and then we are making sure that the stakeholders are actually taken on board to create this kind of a positive environment. Secondly, the industry is also trying to handle a lot of SMEs. The industry associations is trying to handle all of these small or medium scale enterprises, which actually work at the local level, which are almost hard to be regulated at actually. So if you're very organized and very large one, it's much easier to regulate. But you can't be regulating something which is at on a street basis or a street food cluster. So what we have done is, we on our part, we are trying to create something called as street food hubs, where healthy foods are served and the hygiene is rated. But the industry associations are also joining hands to look at helping these entities to create a reformulated versions or improving the technologies that they're trying to use for preparation of products. And they're also trying to organize seminars or workshops to make them aware about it. With all this, we also make sure that the industry commits to create awareness, but also by creating credible information, brochures or informations on the website or on the social media sites, so that the people know what they are eating and whether they're eating healthy or they're getting into something that is unhealthy. And then we are also making sure that, we are nudging them to make responsible advertising. Wherever we come across, the advertisement is misleading or, communicating wrong things to the consumer, we always take it up with these industries, and then we make sure that those advertisements actually are pulled off from the market. Although right now we do not have such powers, but still we are trying to nudge industries to make sure that, through our regulatory framework, make sure that such advertisements which are misleading or miscommunicating are pulled off from their portfolios. So, I mean, this is to say that, we are trying to even nudge the supply side to ensure that healthier options are available to the consumers by complying to the regulations that we are making. Now, having said that, now this is, if I can remind all the audience that this is the pyramid I showed you in the beginning. Now, this would become something like this, where, the consumer is empowered, educated, and, he has an easy means to identify healthfulness of a packaged food. But as a regulator, we are trying to create an efficient compliance mechanism, and then we are trying to make sure that it is implemented effectively. And we are also trying to make sure that we give an opportunity to the industry to rectify any non-compliant issues that they are facing. Once, even if despite giving an opportunity, they don't do it, and then they'll face penal provisions and then prosecutions. And industry on its part also is trying to set nutrient reduction targets, because we are changing regulations. So they have to do this, obviously, and then they have to adopt newer technologies, reformulation strategies, and then we are making sure that, industry also looks in and then does responsible advertising, especially for the youth and children of this country. So by doing all this, in our small way, we are trying to even address a lot of issues under the SDGs, our commitment, India's commitment to the globe. So, I mean, with this, I just would like to end and summarize my talk, saying that whenever you talk about a regulator, it's the policies are always a collective approach, because it can't be done in vacuum. It can't be done in isolation. It has to take all the stakeholders into consideration, and then make sure that a platform is created to provide a safe, healthy, and nutritious food to all. And in doing so, we are also trying to, contribute to our commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm sure all of you are keeping yourself safe through vaccines and wearing masks. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very, very helpful and I think insightful. I think we are just delayed sessions by almost 10 minutes. So I would request the next speaker, Dr. Neena Bhatia, who is a senior specialist, health and nutrition vertical from NITI Aayog. Ma'am, if we can request you maybe just to wrap up the talk maybe a little more faster. I'm sorry, but yeah, thank you. Because the next session is about the youth perspectives, and also we all are here to just support them. So thank you so much. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. At the outset, let me thank Dr. Hemlata and Dr. Sabha Arora for inviting me for this e-webinar, talk series, and hosting this very important, talk series on e-dialogue on important issue of let's fix my plate. In India, we eat through our plate, and it is, very important. What is on the plate is going to affect our nutrition. So my job has actually been made very, very easy by all my previous speakers, Professor Srinath Reddy, Dr. Bhaskar, and Monica and others. So I'll quickly, very, very quickly, I'll just share my screen and I will try to bring in the NITI perspectives. And though I had, certain slides on the extent of, overweight obesity problem. So we have heard all perspectives. Just 1 minute. So we heard all the, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So we heard all the perspectives regarding, regarding we are not so bad, and anthropometry is not going to measure all the problems of undernutrition, but just to very quickly highlight that India is actually facing not just the double but triple burden. Right now we are showing only double burden, and although we are declining a bit in the undernutrition, overnutrition is increasing among children, among adults, men and women. And the rate is pretty rapid. If we see at the national level average also, our NFHS does not capture data on 5 to 10-year-olds, which is available from CNNS, and though the average is around below 5% for various age groups of children, but if we see the increase, in NFHS data, only 3 states have not improved. I mean, have not really increased in overweight obesity. All 33 states have shown some increase, and the prevalence is so variable, right? Up to 13.4% from 1.9% in Dadar, Nagar Haveli to Ladakh, showing the highest prevalence. And if we go further at the district level, the prevalence is even more higher, at 21% in Arunachal Pradesh, Tawang district among children. Similarly, in women, about 29 states have worsened. And again, in women, highest prevalences in Puducherry, 46.2%, almost half our population facing the burden of overweight obesity. And in certain districts in Tamil Nadu, it is as high as 53%. Then men, the story is same. Only 2 states have shown a decrease in overweight obesity, as high as 45.3 in Andaman Nicobar and Islands. And the consequences are all well understood, but on and off NCTs, on diabetes, hypertension, which are also increasing. And these are by anthropometric measures. The earlier speakers have already highlighted at metabolic levels, we may have even more higher levels of obesity. And COVID has also people with higher BMI, had poor, more severe disease, poor recovery rates, and cost of not treating overweight obesity in India could be very high, which, is the reason why Niti Aayog, under the chairmanship of Dr. Paul, took up this initiative on, thinking about the strategies of how to prevent overweight and obesity emerging pandemic or epidemic in the country, with in maternal as well as childhood and overweight nutrition. And we all know that it is an imbalance of physical activity and food intake, and to the both these there are various important factors, but obesogenic environment, which is the topic of discussion. So I'm really very happy that these topics of discussion will be taken up on, and today we are talking about marketing, but since this is the first seminar, I have tried to cover more of an overview of various policy measures that can be done to ensure that there is healthy eating, healthy physical activity, increase in physical activity and healthy lifestyle adopted. We all know that India is committed to end all forms of malnutrition as a signatory of SDGs, and also we are committed to no change in, no increase in childhood overweight, which we are definitely off the track as already shown. And FSSAI has taken various initiatives. I'm not going to talk in detail about it, but we also have Fit India movement, which is started by Ministry of Youth and Affairs and Sports. We also have school health program under Ayushman Bharat. We have we are trying to mainstream physical education and health education literacy through CBSE. And also already the sweetened aerated beverages are in the highest tax bracket of 28% GST slab, where 12% compensations, with a 12% compensation cess. So these are some of the measures which we have in place. Many speakers have talked about it, but are these enough? So I would say probably not. And we are trying to improve this through a multi-sectoral approach of targeting the adolescents to promote healthy eating, physical activity and lifestyle. So in our dialogue, in June, we had representation from Ministry of Youth Affairs, Department of Sports, WCD, Health, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, School Education, FSSAI. So we in NITI feel that we need a whole of government and whole of society approach. And this has already been discussed at length by my previous speaker. We are also engaging with various partners, including from UN, WHO, World Food Program, academic institutions like NIN, PHFI, AIMS, IEG, and many more. And here I would like to really invite all the stakeholders, in the academia, in the government, in the development partners, to really synthesize the evidence, because it is high time. We cannot close our eyes to this epidemic, and since it is a multifactorial nature, it's already been emphasized that we really need to take up various approaches, right from agriculture to making these foods more accessible and affordable, to really improve labeling, to improve food, work on maybe food taxes and subsidies, and promoting compliance, by voluntary compliance by industry, how we can incentivize them, how we can make sure that these foods are taxed at higher rates, what kind of marketing regulations. So there is emerging evidence, but we need, data, more data. Like, for example, we have these regulations, but we are limited by the fact that HFSS foods are not defined. So we would really call out to all the stakeholders to really fill in the gaps that are there. And under the chairmanship of Dr. Paul, already, certain themes were decided, and these have been also shared, and we are working to really make a positive nutrition messaging, and promoting health and sports as a key activity, along with exploring various policy instruments that I talked about, to how they can all be plugged in and brought together to bridge the gap of and make sure that the epidemic of overweight obesity is not rising. We know that PM has already called out to, I was very impressed when about sports people and not getting into advertisements and all going, but also creating these role models, Olympians and Paralympians, to go to schools, to really promote sports, to promote healthy eating, to promote lifestyle, and in that Ayush, yoga, and Act Fit India movement and others also have a role, simultaneously improving nutrition literacy, improving, diversifying the food basket. NITI Aayog is really working with states to make sure millets are included in various social security nets, how we can really mainstream them in the food industry, how we can bring together Nutri Gardens and others to improve the dietary diversity. So multi-pronged approach using these is required, and of course, reaching out to children with positive messages and making sure that there are appropriate regulations which are shown to be effective in is required. And we are engaging with various partners and stakeholders so that we can examine these evidence, we can discuss with the relevant ministries, and a multi-pronged approach for reducing childhood, adolescent and maternal overweight obesity can be put in place. So we are also, as a way forward, like I said, pushing for that we should have diversified diets under social security nets, ICDS, portion 2, we should have, and midday meals, we should have overweight obesity targets. Right now, NFHS is not capturing all children. We have data from CNNS, but now we are also engaging with IIPS and Ministry of Health, how we can include the missing children. I'm very happy that Dr. Hemlata is here, and NIN is planning to do a big study on various age groups and all groups where not only diet, anthropometry, but even biomarkers can be assessed, so that we can really get an idea of and really monitor the situation. We can ensure that the expedited implementation and proper implementation of existing policies and regulations can take place, and also establish intersectoral ministerial coordination and prioritize evidence-based policies that promote healthy eating, physical activity, and lifestyle. Thank you. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing the perspective. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tina. I'll just take the questions for these two sessions very quickly. Since we are running short of time, I'll just take 2-3 very pertinent questions, and then we can go ahead with the panel discussion. From the Q&A box and from the chat box, yeah, Dr. Hemlata reiterates the same point that she made, and Dr. Srinath Reddy also said that we miss the alarming situation in India. If we go by just anthropometry, blood biomarkers tell a different story, and they must necessarily be considered. That's a point. But as regards questions, there are a few questions. Probably the first one relates to the impact of the impact of Eat Right component of FSSAI. Has it been measured? Dr. Purnima Menon asked this question. She is here in the webinar, but I think Dr. Bhaskar had already answered it online. And also there is a question to both Dr. Srinath Reddy as well as I think it pertains to Dr. Bhaskar as well. Is there any proposed timeline for definition of HFSS foods to arrive? So that, because on that a lot of things are dependent. Who would take the question first?
Okay, Dr. Rao, if you may permit, the whole issue is most of the times, as one of the scientific panel member, the definition is actually cannot be done on emotions. Any policy or regulation cannot be done on emotions, cannot be done on perceptions. It's always based on evidence. Unless we have a solid evidence, this is something that actually has to be defined as HFSS. And now, like I said in the beginning of my talk, you can define it for a processed or packaged foods. What happens to something like a gulab jamun, which is made on a street and sold, which is done at your home, or a samosa? So, I mean, it needs a cultural change. That's like I said, any dietary diversity to happen or any cultural or lifestyle changes to kick in, it's not a matter of a year or two. It takes, decades for people to achieve. Now there can be a reverse question on me that, how other people did, and like why Chile could mandate some things and why can't we do it? Now the problem is, if you really look at that's a whole reason I showed before my talk the data on obesity, which is released by one of the WHO recognized body, that the Chile actually had an alarming rate of obesity, almost closer to 30-35% of the population in general, including the children was too heavily obese. So that is the reason that such things takes time. But I'm not saying that it will take a longer time to define HFSS. We are closer to closing the loop. But anyway, it requires evidence, and we are trying to get close to it, and then we will do it as soon as we can. Actually, hopefully it should be in place in the next 1 year. And we also need to give heads up to the industry for following or reformulating their products once we define it. So we also give some heads up time for them by giving some time. So
thank you. Thank you for that response. And there is a question, I think Dr. Srinath Reddy can take this. You made this point, sir, in your talk that, counter advertising would perhaps help. The question is, how about making a few ads to kids that tell them about the ill effects of junk foods and importance of healthy ones? A catchy ad with good purpose may have a positive impact. I think you already made a point on this, and then can you just quickly elaborate on this, while also taking another question of how to promote hyper-local foods, say rich gourds or guavas or male fruits or whatever?
Well, I think it's important to have counter advertising in a manner that people feel enthused about taking healthy nutrient foods and recognize the dangers of unhealthy foods, which can be classified, of course, in multiple ways, particularly energy-dense, nutrient-poor foods. If you only warn against the health ill effects of the these junk foods and sugar sweetened beverages, there is likely to be partial aversion only. And even those ads need to be made very cleverly. They have to be informative, but at the same time, they should not appear to be boring or very preachy. A certain amount of autonomy of the individual's judgment has to be respected, but information has to be provided, and the decision making still needs to be seen as being made by the individual. But equally importantly, we ought to really promote how healthier food options are actually good for their health and recognize what their aspirations are. Do they want to be physically very active? Do they want to be academically performing well? Do they want to be physically attractive to others? So how do these healthier foods actually help? And how do the unhealthy foods detract from those objectives? If the young people have certain goals set for themselves, even during these years of their life, then we must actually see how those goals are being met or being obstructed. If you talk to them only about cardiovascular diseases at the age of 45 or cancer at the age of 55, they're unlikely to be moved. You can certainly talk to them about protecting their fathers and mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers by having a healthy nutrition at home. But in terms of personalizing the information to their own practices, they need to get more tangible benefits which are immediately visible. And we can actually do that. I mean, if people have low muscle mass, both because of poor nutrition and because of low physical activity, their performance in various things will be low. And we can actually construct our advertising campaigns in a manner that they see immediate tangible benefits from changing their food habits.
Right, so thank you. Thank you for the valuable inputs. And I'll take one last question in the interest of time. I think our director, if she's on, can take this question. There is a question on, is there any healthy food or eat right index? Eat right index, it's can it be prescribed district or taluka wise? I don't know that, but male, female, children, adult, age group wise, is there any healthy food that is prescribed? Ma'am, can you take this question if you're around? Okay. Okay. Right. I think there are dietary guidelines coming up on behalf of NIN, and then in which you have these recommended diets for different age groups and different gender groups. I think we will perhaps be there, but the entire beauty of it is in popularizing it and then taking it to the people and then make them use them. Right. I think we will close the Q&A for time being, in the interest of time, and move on to the next. Tina, can you please take over, please?
Dr. Sabha Arora, you had some question?
Yes, ma'am. There was a question
healthy
on
food index.
Yeah, healthy food index or eat right index.
See, we have prepared one my plate for the day.
Yeah.
So there, the proportion of cereals we have limited to the extent possible of 40%. I mean, if we limit our cereals and coarse cereals intake, cereals intake to 40% of the total calories in a day, and include liberal amounts of vegetables and fruits to the extent, where the calories from fruits and vegetables, including nuts and cereal, should be around 10%. And then pulses, legumes, along with some other component, I don't remember exactly. So the first primary objective here is to limit the calorie intake from cereals to 40% of the total calories. If we keep that as the upper limit, and that will ensure dietary diversity and inclusion of other food groups and improve our micronutrient intakes and meeting essential fatty acids and the essential amino acids as well.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, I think we'll move on to the next part of the e-dialogue. Christina, can you go?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, sure, sir. So we have been hearing about the increasing prevalence of overweight, obesity, possible solutions, recommendations to foster a healthy food environment. And one voice is missing in all these discussions, that of the youth and adolescents. With this, now I hand over the platform to our young moderator, Ms. Trip Kaur, and she's working as a program officer at YUVA. Over to you, Trip.
Thank you, Tina. And thank you to all the esteemed speakers who have spared their time and shared their insightful views on advertising regulations and restricting marketing exposure of unhealthy foods and beverages to adolescents. For the purpose of this panel, we aim to converge diverse youth voices and decision makers who are involved in the design and delivery of programs that aim to drive results for young people in the long run. So as I work with YUVA, which is the adolescent development section at UNICEF India, and is led by Ms. Dwarka Sriram, has shown, centering young people in decision making has helped us explore great potential for scale, sustainability, and impact. Moreover, in this panel, we also have Dr. Zoya Rizvi, who spearheads the School Health and Wellness Initiative under Ayushman Bharat. Ma'am, we at YUVA have found the transformative potential of this initiative on adolescent health to be very inspirational. On the panel, we also have Mr. Chaitanya Prasad, who leads work with DD India at the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Sir, your presence on today's panel aligns very strongly with what our speakers have been discussing until now. That is, media and advertising have powerful influence over young people's attitudes and behaviors, but can also function as channels to nurture better health outcomes. And finally, we have with us Mr. Sabha Arora, a student of Tagore International School in New Delhi, who fervently believes in advancing healthy food environments for all young people. Our initiative to fix our food and strengthen healthy food environments aims to bring together these diverse efforts and optimize resources to achieve results at a faster pace. This is very key for us because, as per UNICEF's mandate, ensuring healthy food environments for young people is an urgent need for adolescent health, rights, and agency. Additionally, through this program, we aim to pass on the baton to the young people who are being most impacted by food environments and choices. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Zoya Rizvi, Deputy Commissioner RCH, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, to throw light on the following question. The School Health and Wellness Initiative is a platform with potential to mobilize adolescents as health and wellness messengers. Can you share your vision for how these messengers can contribute to the Let's Fix Our Food campaign?
Yeah, hi, good evening. How much time do I have to share my vision so I can go accordingly?
Tina,
running ahead of time.
As per the time check, it should be 5 to 8 minutes, right?
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. Okay, so I will try and keep it crisp and small and short. Okay, so welcome everybody. It's lovely to hear such experts speak on nutrition, importance of nutrition, because that is something which we have been really trying to push across the board from health to the other departments, and it is so nice to see so many other departments and agencies which are also working on the same topic. The first, I would just like to give a brief about what School Health and Wellness Program is. That is just a program which partners health and education together. And together we work to train the teachers. There are 2 teachers per school who are being trained as health and wellness ambassadors. And these teachers will transact schools. And through these transactions, what we have, what you mentioned as health and wellness messengers. So 2 children per class will be selected and they will support this teacher in carrying out these sessions. So that is one side. The second thing I want to say is that nutrition being so important for all our programs, especially School Health and Wellness Program, we have 11 themes, and out of the 11 themes, 3 themes deal with nutrition and lifestyle. One is nutrition, health and sanitation. One is growing up healthy. One is promotion of healthy lifestyle. So all these 3 together. So if a child kind of misses one session, there's something else back up. If he misses the 2 of them, there's a third. And they're all reinforcements of similar things, how to choose good food, how to stay healthy, what not to eat. And another very important thing, because we're talking about social media as well, is that we have one component which is safe use of social media. And there the child is kind of discussed as to what to see on social media and what to believe and what not to believe. So that also we're trying to build this kind of capacity in school children, that what they should believe, what they see on TV or listen on some kind of website, and what not to believe. So that they build this critical thinking that, okay, everything you see on TV is not right. Everything you see on social media is not right. So that also. So I think the health of school children in a very critical way, and health and wellness messengers are I think are going to be our foot soldiers out there, because because through these transactions, these children will be trained in school. They will be provided correct attention, correct information also, and these young children will then actually go back and they will work as messengers within the community. So they will go and inform their own parents, their own elders, their own other peers, and even within community. So by just using school as a medium, we are going to affect the community. So that's a huge platform which you're looking at. And I think I'll be frank with you to say that this is not going to bring drastic effect, nothing will happen in a year or two or even 5 years. We're looking for a generational change, and we have to be patient. We should not say that, okay, 1 year happened, what happened, there's no change in behavior, because changing behaviors, changing attitudes, and changing the lifestyle is something which takes years. So we have to keep on doing what we are doing in the correct way, so that this change from the teacher to the student to the parent to the entire community takes place. And another point I would just like to mention is that school can only do so much. If we don't involve the parents, if the parents are not on board with what we are doing, it's going to be a total failure. So there is a part which is called Adolescent Health and Wellness Day, which may be celebrated in schools or communities. And I'm happy to share that a lot of states are celebrating in schools only, because that way, as a whole, the school management committee is there, the parents are there, and they are realizing how important every child is, how important every health aspect of a child is. So I think we are working in sync. A lot of our programs are working with education in school as well as out of school with WCD. So we are looking for a change in healthy outcomes of our school going children in years to come. So let us be patient. Let us keep doing what we are doing, so that this change eventually comes and we manage to maybe kind of itch towards the SDG goals, not reach very quickly, but yes, we are going to reach them. I think that's it for my side, and I'll wait for Q&A if I'm here.
Thanks so much, ma'am. Ma'am, and just like one question, to what extent do you capture young people's voices as part of this program? So do you do any polls with them? Do you take their feedback? Do they contribute to your program design in some way?
Okay, so there are two things. One thing is that we actually carried out a very quick dipstick poll way back in 2017. And that covered 11 states. So that was a very interesting poll, which threw up, I think, a lot of things which we knew. I mean, I would say it's not that we didn't know, but it threw up the importance that menstrual hygiene continues to be important. It threw up the importance continues to be a problem, and also threw out the fact that violence at home is happening, and however, of course, during COVID it increased. So all the issues, whether it is sexual reproductive health, whether it is mental health issues, whether it is non-communicable diseases, nutrition, all these things actually came out in the survey, which was really very interesting. And so what I'm saying is that our policies, though, are as a guidance for the states, but states are always free to tweak, because certain states have maybe incidents of access to menstrual hygiene is very little, so all their emphasis is on budgeting for access to safe napkins. Other states have greater issues of mental health. So then I think they invest a lot on or making high quality IC materials. So that, I think, interaction is always there. And as you said, feedback from children is very important, because our Adolescent Health and Wellness Day is based on what the adolescents decide what is going to happen. So the themes are decided by the adolescents, and we have what you call the peer educator program, in which the peers themselves get trained and they talk amongst their own groups about the various health issues which they face. And in case they get stuck, they talk to the A&M or the medical officer. So I'm saying that continuous dialogue is there already with these, and since this program is still very new, 6 years old. So we are always happy to support the states and tweak the program as time changes, because disease patterns are changing, and so should the program interventions. Why not?
Noted, ma'am. It sounds brilliant, and there's great youth centrality in this program. And I hope that when we work on the Let's Fix Our Food program, and we run our capacity building, when we adapt our scope modules, when we do more adolescent engagement, then we can tap into the school health program as well. Okay, moving on. Ms. Dwarka Sriram, Chief of Generation Unlimited Yuva, Youth Development and Partnerships at UNICEF India, had to leave earlier because of another commitment, but she has recorded her presentation and remarks, and we would be playing that now. For any questions, do put them in the chat box, and our team will be answering them.
gratitude to the esteemed speakers who have shared their insights and proposed solutions to create healthy food environments. It's an honor to be on our panel.
Just checking if the audio, you can hear it?
Yes, the audio is, yes, we can hear it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I express our gratitude to the esteemed speakers who have shared their insights and proposed solutions to create healthy food environments. It's an honor to be on our panel with Mr. Chaitanya Prasad, Dr. Zoya Rizvi, and Mr. Sabha Arora, our adolescent representative. As the Chief of Generation Unlimited Yuva, Youth Development and Partnerships at UNICEF, I'd like to emphasize that adolescent and youth engagement and leadership is key for the success of programs meant to transform their attitudes and behavior. I'd like to reflect on Yuva and our unique proposition to this multi-sectoral alliance. In 2018, UNICEF initiated the Global Generation Unlimited Partnership to meet the urgent needs of expanding education, skills development, employment, and social impact opportunities for young people across the world. In India, the chapter of Generation Unlimited called Yuva was launched in 2019. At the core of Yuva is the intention and institutional muscle to meaningfully engage and listen to young people's priorities, preferences, and aspirations. In fact, the very name Yuva was coined by young people who attended our initial youth-led consultations. By focusing on engagement, learning, skills development, and employment for young people, UA aims to partner with and mobilize multi-sectoral support to a generation of empowered young changemakers in India. Since its genesis, more than 8 million young people have participated in civic actions over the last 2 years of our work. Many of them have emerged as youth leaders and change makers and are continuing their journeys towards skilling and economic opportunities. Our Young People's Action Team, which envisions our work as part of our governance structure, as well as youth leaders from our programs on the field, have added immense richness of ideas, action, and inspiration to the way we work. Their participation has also meant that our results are more impactful since young people have contributed to the decision-making process. Similarly, UA is supporting the Let's Fix Our Food program so that adolescents and youth's access to healthy food and healthy food environments is strengthened. The Let's Fix Our Food program brings in diverse stakeholders from the government, academia, UN bodies, NGOs, and CSOs, but most importantly, the adolescents and youth themselves in the form of a multi-sectoral consortium to work towards advancing healthy food environments and lifestyle. We have ensured that adolescent engagement and leadership is the core to the functioning of the program, since they perform multiple roles as beneficiaries of policy action and capacity building, influencers, and leaders shaping up public opinion, and as equal partners working on our program design and implementation. I can begin with a brief look at the Let's Fix Our Food program. So if you could please move to the next slide. Beginning with a stark data point, India will be home to 27 million overweight and obese adolescents by 2030. This implies that adolescents do not have access to healthy food environments, which severely limits the exercise of their rights and agency. To advance healthy food environments, UNICEF is supporting the policy actions recommended by Niti Aayog and ensuring adolescent engagement to achieve some of these goals. Next slide, please. As we have seen before, the young people are critical stakeholders that we need to bring to the table as equal partners in this process. We aim to ensure this not only by capturing their voices and understanding their experiential realities, but also by mainstreaming their participation in decision-making. In our programs, young people have played a multitude of roles. They have raised their voice for social issues like disability rights, helping with the COVID-19 response, taken action to lead campaigns for sanitation and waste management in their communities, partnered with local governments and district administrations to mobilize other young people to resolve civic issues, become role models supporting other young people with mental health and psychosocial support in their areas, and develop innovative solutions ranging from interactive artwork to tech-based solutions. On the other hand, It is our responsibility as expert and seasoned practitioners to listen to young people's perspective and priorities, include in the design, implementation, and evaluation of planning and implementation, make way for their experiences, expertise, networks, and leadership to shape our response. Next slide, please. The long-term vision of the Let's Fix Our Food program is to lead to attitudinal and behavioral shifts in adolescents, such that they adopt healthy diets and lifestyles. Our process for achieving this aim is the shorter term is to bring together a consortium of partners with varying expertise, ranging from research to policy making to capacity building and implementation. And finally, the approach of this program is to combine policy recommendations with adolescent engagement and capacity building. Next slide, please. We plan to achieve 3 significant outcomes. While the first is related to reducing the consumption of food high in fat, sugar, and salt, the other outcomes are related to increasing physical activity and reducing screen time. 3 pillars support these outcomes. For policy actions, the Let's Fix Our Food program will develop policy briefs on relevant issues highlighted by Niti Aayog and make recommendations to ministries, government bodies, and schemes like the school health program. At the level of adolescent and youth engagement, the program will build a sustainable structure for regular consultations with them to build out the design and implementation. Moreover, we plan to listen to their voices and share insights in the form of a report. Finally, adolescents and youth will also take a leadership role in the policy discussions, which will add great value to the recommendations and policy changes at scale. Our third pillar is capacity building and is composed of webinars, trainings, workshops, and courses that can be taken up by different stakeholders, including civil society organizations, adolescents, and youth. Next slide, please. For ecosystem-based problems and challenges, we need an ecosystem approach for partnerships. With adolescents and youth at the center, Let's Fix Our Food program will bring in the combined capacities and expertise of government partners and ministries, UN bodies, NGOs, CSOs, and academia to tackle this issue in a multi-pronged manner. As we can see here, while PHFI and IEG are our partners, and ICMR NIN is the capacity building partner in this consortium, we are bringing together knowledge partners like Deakin University, World Obesity Federation, and Global Health Advocacy Incubator, as well as enabling partners like WHO and World Food Program, and most significantly, working with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Ministry of Finance, and Niti Aayog would be important to trigger ecosystem change. All of us come from unique standpoints, but that also implies that we can engineer significant shifts to combat unhealthy food environments by relying on our expertise and combining our efforts. The journey from research to policy change, capacity building to implementation, and engagement to leadership is a powerful one. And the Let's Fix Our Food consortium hopes to facilitate that journey towards impact where adolescents' right to a healthy food environment is safeguarded. And my last slide. So finally, in order to reach adolescent and youth across contexts, we want to tap into the different networks spanning across the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, CSOs and NGO partner networks, school systems, digital platforms, and youth alliances. I would like to conclude by saying that every adolescent and young person deserves a healthy food environment, and it is our job to enable it. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Mr. Chaitanya Prasad, Additional Director General News, DD News, and DD India Additional DG, Directorate of Film Festivals, and OSD, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, to take the floor. Sir, as discussed during this webinar, advertising of HFSS foods needs to be regulated to fight against an obesogenic environment. What has the MOIB already done, and what will you further do to tighten marketing and advertising of unhealthy foods to adolescents through media channels? How can MOIB engage with the adolescents themselves?
So can you have your mic on, please? Sir, can you have the mic on, please? Join with computer audio. Hello, sir, we are not able to hear you. So can you please fix your audio connection?
Sir, he's trying. I think his audio is now connecting. Yeah.
Yeah, now it's connecting. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Can we start? Sorry for the delay. Just give me 2 minutes.
No worries, sir. Yes, we can
Well,
start and we can conclude.
yeah, my apologies. You see, some technological hitch, waiting for some time, and then something propped up, which a colleague of mine helped. You see, I thank you very much. I mean, I heard the entire narrative of the nutritional architecture, the do's and don'ts, the kind of processes, the regulation, etc., suggestive measures, the tools, the outreach, the target audience. Now comes to the element of communication, and as you were rightly asking me, what has the Ministry of I&B done? Well, you see, this whole process, you see, we are more of a kind of a facilitator. My personal view is because we are living in an age, thanks to the pandemic, you see, we are all living in an age of an infodemic. We are all living in an age of communication outbreak, or I personally call it communication indigestion. And we are talking about nutrition, we are talking about adolescents. And I was fortunate enough to handle the adolescent health program way back in 2004 when I was with the Ministry of Health, the National Adolescent Strategy. So taking it from there after roughly 17 years, the, the point is you need, in this whole process, I think you need to take baby steps first. You can't have a grand vision because you see the first element has to be the integration of adolescents with the communication process, which at times I think is not there. So start with the basics of communication, look upon as adolescents as a basic, as the kind of nodal target group that needs to be taken forward as far as the whole outline of messaging, content, etc. is concerned, first of all. The second thing is when you deal with such a sensitive subject, it's extremely important that you adopt for yourself the ideas of innovation, adaptation, transition, and transformation. These are not cliches, but these need to be incorporated in one. Two is, this is my view, you know, whenever you deal with any form of communication, Dr. Reddy was talking about it, and it was a pleasure hearing his discourse because it was a mix of the practical as well as the theoretical. The 5 R's of communication that I talk of, whether you talk about reconfiguring, rethinking, redesigning, rediscovering, or reimagining. Now, these are not just concepts, but these are ideas which need to go into the advertising framework, right? Now, we have regulation. Personally speaking, as far as the INB ministry is concerned, we are more of facilitators because we have always believed in the idea of self-regulation, right? When I was listening to speakers, I just happened to go and do a bit of Google, and there I managed to read something on a energy drink which is very popular among the adolescents. I never tried it, unfortunately. The Red Bull, right? So I was just going through the basic literature of Red Bull. It says it's a mood enhancer, and that's the first part. Then it says if you take it, then it helps you to combat cancer. It gives you energy. Health of blood cells are taken up. I mean, it's more on the positive side, and immediate burst of energy. I don't know, and this is very popular in this adolescent group, right? So these are things which, if they are there, I'm why I mentioned this drink particular, because if you see the young generation, they go across and it's the Red Bull which they have in hand, or they go and buy it across the counter. Now, if you want to stop this, now what are you supposed to do? My gut feeling or my understanding of thing is you need to first define the first primary steps or a kind of a primary module that you need to take forward. Then you go to the stage B after you do a quick dipstick evaluation. Then you go to the, so it's not something which can happen instantly. One. Two is it has to be a collaborative partnership amongst all stakeholders, right? INB ministry, yes, it is the fulcrum, it is the outreach, it is the nodal agency to take government communication forward. And we do a lot of kind of advertising processes, etc. But in this whole process, what I would understand very well is the role and responsibility of nodal institutions, whether it is FSSI or you're talking about ASCII or even the the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, because they put in an act. And as far as misleading advertisement is concerned, what you should not forget is the role and responsibility of advertisers. The celebrities comes next. The role and responsibility of advertisers. Today, they have identified different, what should I say, verticals according to the demographic distribution of population, and start with young kids. Now, look at the kind of television channels. You see the kind of the framing of the ecosystem, whether it's a Cartoon Network or even the products that the kind of the glitz and glamour that is associated with products. And for example, if you see a kurkure, it's not very healthy, or even any of the chips that I'm not saying you should not eat it, but look at the way it is magnified. Look at the aerated drinks. Taste the thunder. The latest aerated drink featuring Shah Rukh Khan, my God, it bombarded the entire social media network. So what I'm trying to tell you essentially is regulation is one part of the story. The behavior change, which is necessary, which is important, needs to be taken forward. Now, how do you do that behavior change? We tried that very well as far as COVID is concerned, whether we talked about the essential behavior, pattern of mask, washing hands, social distancing, that needs to be reiterated. Now, as far as celebrities are concerned, for young children, what you need to understand is that the advertisers are very smart to pick on even the young teenage kids or the young toddlers who are celebrities, the young kids who appear in different serials. They are looked upon as a kind of brand ambassadors. Now, that is something which can come in from inside. No government policy, no government regulation can do that. As far as the INB ministry is concerned, the INB ministry has taken a lot of steps to take this process forward. As far as Doordarshan is concerned, we have done a number of programs where we have talked about all the elements that has been spoken of. You see the kind of the ill effects of having bad food habits. Somebody mentioned about the gulab jamun. Now, gulab jamun is something which has a historical legacy of the past, and it has a legacy to the future. The only thing that has changed, perhaps, is from being sold openly, you're getting it in cans, etc. So the packaging has increased. So what I'm trying to say is that the money that goes in, the kind of packaging that goes in, the sleek the content process that comes in is very difficult to keep the children or the young people away. All right. So this is something which is very, very important. My suggestion is, or my submission to this August audience is, that you want to take this
whole process forward. It's indeed a great initiative, needs to be supported, needs to be taken forward, but one should not get over ambitious, because there, and also there has to be a partnership. There are two aspects to it. One is information literacy. Now, how does information literacy come? You can't make a young child literate unless the parents themselves are literate. And on the other hand, you need to talk about it in the media space, where you talk about media literacy, right? Now, what is media literacy? So that's another story altogether. So a combination of both can take it forward. Now, as far as television advertising is concerned, we cannot, I must be very frank, we have a program and advertisement code. I would not like to go into the details of it, but what is very critical is they are there on paper. It's self-regulatory. ASCII looks into it. ASCII has reprimanded it based on a complaint. It's based on a complaint system that is in offering. Even in the case of the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, where there are three-tier, configuration is there at the district, then how you give your grievances. So there is a process that has gone forward. Now, my request is that you can apply this whole program, this process, the awareness on a pilot basis. This would be my suggestion. Take baby steps to take this whole process forward, and hopefully with the support of all stakeholders, have a multi-stakeholder consultation. And what is important is, when you talk about schools, you see, when you talk about statistics and numbers, etc., or you give the nutritional value, a lot of these presentations which had the numbers game, etc., it doesn't entice children to change their habits. It's very, very important, you see. They walk in and they pick up a Coke, reference to Ronaldo putting it aside. But that was a Ronaldo who's a mature Ronaldo today, right? And I personally feel he did it for a lot of media attention. Fair enough. I mean, that's his call. But what I'm trying to tell you is that children, if you want to motivate, if you look the way they have done, they've participated in the firecrackers, the crackers movement, or even for Holi, you see, how do you play Holi? So it's been a kind of a movement that has been cultivated through the right notes and through the right stakeholders and at the right time and appropriate messaging. I personally feel we should do that. As far as IMP ministry is concerned, Doordarshan is concerned, as a public broadcaster, we have taken the process forward. We have given support to the program, and we would be willing to do it once you have this whole agenda at place. My suggestion is you should have, now that COVID hopefully is over, you have a national consultation where you get people to talk about the importance and relevance of communication in this whole area, so that people are aware. You see, books, booklets, printed material, online, all that stuff is fine. Everyone is aware of it. I'm sure every parent is aware that this is not good for the health of the child, but how do you draw him back? That is very important. So that is something which you need to build, cultivate, energize, and make sure that we take forward. And I'm sure we'll be fairly successful. Thank you for your patient hearing. I'll have to leave perhaps because I have another meeting coming up, so I may have to leave with your permission.
Sure, sir. I mean, that's completely fine. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. I had a question, but I can connect with you
Yeah,
later in
please
case
go
you
ahead.
have.
No, that's all right. I mean,
Okay.
please tell me.
I just wanted to talk to you about a best practice. So you've talked about COVID-19 based marketing or informational awareness. So what worked for COVID-19, which we can apply in case of the Let's Fix Our Food program as well, or any other best practice like the
No,
perhaps the
very good.
campaign
I'll
or
tell you
any other.
what you need to do is to reinforce the idea through different formats. I can give you a very good example. When the polio program in the health ministry was perhaps one of the most successful communication programs that was launched by the Ministry of Health over a period of time. There is no silver bullet. There is no magic wand as far as communication is concerned. As far as COVID was concerned, it was a reiteration time and again. It was a reiteration by the Honorable Prime Minister, by key stakeholders, by the Secretary Health, Mr. Rajesh Bhushan, that you need to do this. So eventually it stuck into people's mind, but still they were resistant to wear a mask, right? Or they were resistant to the idea of social distancing. So now it's suddenly that COVID has vanished. So everybody, it's free for all. My suggestion is for this particular case, you need to reiterate. It is not something that a one-day advertisement needs to work. No, There needs to be a concerted campaign. There are other avenues which are, the social cost of it are absolutely zero. Something on YouTube which catches up. Something on social media in terms of infographic. The ill effects of, having this, the kind of ill effects on health that I would say. You see, a samosa. I mean, if I can say this at a personal note, in the good old days in the hostel, we used to go across, have chai and samosa. I don't know whether I would be, or the chole bhature, would I be able to do that today? I'm not very sure. I am not very, and see how that has now packaged as a street food, how it has graduated. You had to have those pani puris, you see, it used to go in and out. Now it's all served well and square. So that kind of sophistication has come in. What I'm trying to tell you is that they have also learned. But what we need to do is the best practice needs to be reiterated. And perhaps what you could do is start from the young children, not necessarily schools, because outside schools, the ice cream bars and everything would all be sold. I mean, you can't stop that. It would be mayhem if you stop that, because unnecessarily the reaction would come in, because you are unfortunately hitting on the livelihood of somebody. So that is something I would not suggest. But if you start a campaign, I'm sure it would be noticed. If the Health Ministry, FSSAI, Ministry of INB, Fit India movement is a classic example. Suddenly everybody is so obsessed with walking. Why? And you have those watches where you keep on watching your steps. Why do you do that? I mean, why are we doing it? Because we are suddenly feeling that, no, we don't want any disease to come inside us, right? So it's a natural break which comes to us rather than someone forcing it down our throat, right? So that is the kind of inclination or the internalization of the idea that needs to be followed. The right message, not very complex, very simple, straight, which hits the mind, right? Like smoking. Gutka is one challenge. I'm not trying to digress, but that's how it is. Drinking, for that matter. These are aspects which the young generation needs to be aware of, right? So if you can do that, best practice, fair enough. I'm sure you'll succeed, right? Thank you. I think I've taken enough of your time. It's getting late for everyone. Thank you so much for your attention and inviting me to this wonderful seminar. I've learned a lot. So that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing your views, sir. And we also really appreciate your presence on the panel.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to invite Mr. Sabha Arora. Sabha is a student of grade 11. He is a photography and theatre enthusiast who believes in ensuring healthy food environments for all young people. As a young person, one second, I think there's some audio. Yeah. As a young person yourself, Sabha, can you reflect on why HFSS foods, that is foods which are high in fat, salt, and sugar, are so popular among adolescents? Can you suggest actions which young people can take to increase the momentum towards healthy food environments among adolescents?
Right. I'd first like to take a moment to thank the organization and the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be a part of such a panel with such esteemed personalities. Coming on to the question, I think whenever we talk about junk food, there are three problems that we might face. There are three things that come to my mind when I hear junk food. The first one being marketing, peer pressure, and addiction. Now, talking about marketing, like most of the other people I know, I also loved junk food. And I was pretty enticed by the delicious and the mouth-watering dishes of the food items that were shown on TV. Until the point when I went with my photography teacher to a food photography shoot. And it was really very shocking to see how toothpaste is used as cheese in all of these photos, in all of these campaigns. It is because of the phenomena, jo dikhta hai, wahi bikta hai. I mean, where our mouths just start watering without any second thoughts, we are ready to gain some calories. And I think, as an artist, I think that we can add ghar ka khana photography genre under food photography just to promote it and create social media campaigns about it, promote it, and which is both creative and healthy. And the second point being peer pressure. Speaking for all the teenagers and the adolescents, I'd say that the problem that we usually face is peer pressure, knowingly or unknowingly. We are under peer pressure when we are with our friends and we are forced to eat junk food. Like I won't want to carry my own tiffin box with food which is not attractive or palatable, and while I'm hanging out with my friends, or I won't try to look for a salad which is healthy but it is inaccessible and expensive while my friends are having burgers and pizza. So one can actually be bullied or discriminated against because of the food choices. While so what I did in this case was that I suggested my friends that we should have food at home. Like this Monday, we went to a friend's place and we had homemade food. And trust me, it isn't bad at all. At least you know that the food that you're having has been cooked properly and is the best quality simply because it's homemade. And if you ask me why young people like me would want to be indulged only in homemade food, well, many are shifting towards healthy eating options because they want to be fit while they're moving towards adulthood. So they start taking care of such little things that make a change, and at least the ones around me do. And because one doesn't even know if the French fries one is having at a joint has been deep fried in fresh oil or in reused oil, and this reused oil, I think it can be really very harmful because it increases the trans fats and they are rancid. So if you don't have time to make food and prefer easily available food items, so we can use fast food. Fast food and junk food, again, there are two. I'm sorry. The fast food and junk food are two very misconcepted terms. Fast food is food that is available very easily, whereas junk food is just junk. Like we have so many alternatives like dry fruits that are filling and healthy. The regional food items like local gram, etc., which are local foods that have good health components and are fast and tasty. Or one could just have fruits, seasonal fruits, to be specific. They are locally available, and in our culture, we have such a diverse universe, I'd say, of these healthy fast foods like local nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, which can be cheaper, easily accessible, and tasty. So, coming on to the third problem, addiction. Sometimes we can be very attracted to these food items, and we aren't just able to overcome this problem, this addiction. All we need to do here is form a habit of having homemade food, and forming a habit is very easy. I've read a few books like The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. There is this concept that you just need 21 days of conviction if you want to achieve something. We could use social media campaigns for our advantage over here. Here we could create campaigns, online groups, servers, just to stay connected to the people who are also trying to do the same, overcome their addiction, and move towards the goal together. Now, I look forward to see youth being involved and the meaningful implementation of these solutions, and then we're good to go.
Thanks so much, Savya. It's been great listening to your views. A lot of the things you suggested are actually things that we can do practically, like the 21-day social media campaign that we can do, wherein we take a pledge to say not eat foods that are high in salt, fat, and sugar. So these are practical solutions that can be implemented, and they can be led by youth leaders like you. So do you have any questions from the panelists or other speakers? Dr. Vani, I think, is asking some questions. Yeah, we can do a Ghar Ka Khana challenge, which can be a 21-day challenge. We can do a photo challenge. So these are all practical solutions that you've suggested. If you have any questions from the panelists or any questions from other speakers, please go ahead and ask. That's fine. I think we are good to go then. This panel discussion has been very fruitful, very insightful. I'd now like to invite Dr. Sabha Arora to throw light on some key takeaways. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's been a very good and interesting kickoff for the e-dialogues. 5 key messages that there are several key messages, but 5 topmost that we need to take from this, e-dialogue is what comes to my mind. Perhaps we can add more, but the first one is India is indeed committed to halt the rise of obesity and its prevalence, and evidence is very clear from around the world that high exposure to HFSS food marketing contributes indeed to their obesogenic environment. So to protect the current and future generations, all stakeholders must come together and amplify, and they have to coordinate their efforts to strengthen obesity. And at the same time, as Dr. Reddy said, although the regulation on as Dr. Bhaskar said, although the regulation on restricting unhealthy foods around school environments is in place, it is stuck for the reason that threshold levels for HFSS foods are not yet, arrived at. And that is one thing and one key takeaway from this e-dialogue, that they have to be done at the earliest in the interest of time and in the interest of the looming problem. And also another important takeaway is that from Dr. Reddy is that food choices of children are not independent. They are indeed conditioned, constrained, and conscious. So appealing to celebrities who endorse these HFSS foods not to do so and encouraging them to do so could be one of the strategies, and also counter advertising of healthy foods and telling people what are unhealthy regularly. And I also take a few points from what Mr. Chaitanya Prasad said, that we need to take baby steps and we need to recognize, rediscover, reimagine, realign, rethink on all these things. And those baby steps could be of initially weaning the celebrities from endorsing these foods, and also doing counter advertising for healthy foods on a regular basis. Just as the COVID campaign has been successful, a reiterative campaign and reinforcing campaign could be very, very interesting. And then the school health and wellness programs that Dr. Zoya was talking about are in place. But I think, as most of the panelists said, and as our director also said, it is very important to promote key skills to the adolescents and children through school health programs. Although she says the nutrition component is very strong, and then of course it takes indeed it takes many years for behavior change to kick in. But definitely yes, the skills that children need to learn from the school health program, if we can contribute to it, is first is to distinguish between healthy and unhealthy foods wherever they are, whether it is at home or away from home. Second, being able to read labels and make sense of it, and judge the quality, nutritional quality of the food that they are consuming. And third and most important is eating healthy from whatever locally is available. If these 3 key skills are taught to children through these school health programs, it will be a great help. And fifth and the last key message is that it is not just enough to have behavior change programs, but availability of healthy foods, as Dr. Himlata put it in the chat box. Availability and accessibility of healthy foods and also affordability of healthy foods needs to be taken care while the campaign is on. Last but not the least, adding to all this, youngsters, as Sabha said, Ghar Ka Khana campaign, in the sense that photography of foods in an alluring way, and make the home cooked foods, make the healthy foods look trendy. In fact, there is a concept called food porn. Food porn is usually associated with unhealthy foods and making foods look alluring, unhealthy foods look alluring. But if the same concept can be reversed, this is a small concept note on which we were working, and then I'm sure it will be out very soon. He in fact touched the same chord and said, why don't we make Ghar Ka Khana more appealing through photography and social media campaign? I think these are the key takeaways from this particular e-dialogue, and most of them are practicable. I think we should work on taking them forward. And at this moment, if there are any closing remarks that our director wants to give, then I'll leave about a minute for her to wrap up. Else, I would extend my words of thanks. Ma'am, would you want to say anything in conclusion? Okay, then I think this has been an excellent kickoff for the e-dialogue series, and it happened on the World Obesity Day. That's very interesting, and thank you very much. And I would like to thank all the panelists for being here, especially Dr. Monica, Dr. Florentine, and Professor Srinath Reddy, Dr. Bhaskar, Dr. Neena, and also in the youth-led panel, Dr. Zoya, Dr. Chaitanya Prasad, and Sabha Arora. And Dwarka was not here, but her recorded presentation was there. And thank you very much, Trip, for ably steering that particular session. And I would also like to thank the full support that I got from Dr. Vani, Tina, and Dwarka and everything, and also my students Archana and Priyadarshini for their support in capturing the key messages from today's e-dialogue, and Dr. Sylvia and Dr. Santosh for popularizing this program on the platform. And I thank each and every panelist here, and also the participants in such huge numbers they were there, even though the time